Hello guys, in today's video I'm gonna tell you when you actually do not need ND filters. Yeah, you heard it right. The company that makes ND filters is gonna tell you the cases when you do not need the filters. So let's start. Well, first of all, let's just think about why we use the ND filters. We use them because we want to have motion blur in our image. Motion blur allows us to have more natural look, but sometimes motion blur kills the image. Well, let's just take some Hollywood movies that use green screen. Well, when you're using the green screen, you do not want to have motion blur in your image because it will be really hard to key out your objects. Well, let's just say you have a really fast moving object in front of the green screen, so that motion blur that appears in your image is really hard to remove, and it makes the editing workflow really difficult because there is almost no way to get rid of that. If you look at the fine details and the fine edges, which are really hard to key out, and if you have motion blur in your image, you will notice the spill from the green screen, and you can easily remove it if you just increase your shutter speed and you get rid of the motion blur. Not only motion blur is an obstacle when filming with green screen, but also it creates the, let's just say, a flattering image, flattering look. And if you film in action scenes, you film in fighting scenes, and motion blur in that case really does not do the justice to the scene. The fast moving objects, they're really hard to be recognized by our brain. And in fast moving scenes, it's really hard for our brain to comprehend what is actually happening because everything is moving so fast. And if you have motion blur, then it's even more harder for us to understand what's happening. If you have more sharper look, if you get rid of the motion blur, then it's more clear what's actually happening. It's more clear what objects are present in the scene. Plus, it gives the video a more action feeling. It does not give that flattering look, it gives a truly action feeling. So this guy is doing some kickboxing performance, shadow boxing, all that good stuff, and you see there is basically no motion blur here because I filmed with higher frame rate, and in that case the action scene just feels more actiony, if I can say that word. And probably one of the most common mistakes when people use filters, and they should not use the filters, and when they trying to fly the drone or even with the regular DSLR camera, and it's relatively dark outside already, but they for some reason feel like the filter will give them I don't know, a special image, and they think that filter will help them to improve the colors, it will help them to improve the image, which in reality leads them to crank up their ISO just to compensate for that underexposure which filter delivers, which basically a mistake because the filter's purpose is to decrease the exposure hitting the sensor. And until you 100% sure that you want that motion blur, then yeah, use the ND filter during sunset time. But any other cases, I would not recommend so because sunsets are happening really fast. For any other case though, you would need the filters if you want to have that motion blur, if you want to have that cinematic look to your image, and if you film it during the bright day, then yes, you would definitely need to use the filters to improve your image. Yeah, so one more time guys, before you film, just make sure you know what look you're going for, whether you want to have the motion blur or you do not want to have the motion blur. If you do want, use the filter. If you want to film an action scene or if you want to film something with green screen, then you do not need the filter. So it all comes down to a particular cause that you need the filters for. Yeah, so that's about it for today's tutorial. I don't think that you heard of any company not promoting their product. That's pretty uncommon, I think. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check our Instagram, tag us on your photos. We're reposting your content, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.